What is good, y'all? Sean the Smooth Game Man back with yet another reaction video, baby. And today we are back with some more NC Hammer videos, man. This is more just anime content in general. Today we have My Hero Academia on tap as we have the strongest quirks ranked and explained. If you guys are enjoying the Anime Tuesdays, man, let me know down below in the comment section. Ooh. And leave the video with a like, man, so I can know that you guys want to see more of it. It really shows that support, pushes it out to other people so that way we can get more subs to the channel, man. Thank you guys so much for an eventful, fun, amazing 2024, man. We've done a lot of great things. We've seen a lot of growth on the channel and experimented with a lot of different things, and I want to keep that going here as we go into the new year. So anything that y'all want to see me try, or anything that you think will just make it better for you to watch in general, let me know down in the comment section. We can always chop it up down below. And as always, subscribe. If you guys are brand new to the family, man, road to that 5K. Let's keep pushing so we can get towards it. So, My Hero Academia, I would say I'm fully caught up. I haven't seen that last little season, kind of basically the ending to it. So there might be some spoilers in here for me, but I know enough of it to probably get an educated list here going. Agree or disagree with some of these points, and of course he's going to explain it too as well. So maybe it might even change my mind and help me out with seeing the fact that I haven't seen it last season. I will catch up to it eventually. I'm just so locked in on Black Clover right now. I don't even be watching anything else. So let me know what you guys are currently watching right now down below, and what site do you guys watch things on. Me personally, I'm on Crunchyroll, but let me know what you guys are watching your anime on. And without further ado, let's just get into this heat.
Powers in anime. They're as iconic as the characters or the battles that make an anime interesting. Sure, you can give me an interesting character with incredible character development and a cool design, but if the powers that they use aren't that interesting, it's gonna be hard for me to stay interested in said anime. Which is why for an aspiring mangaka, the creation of a power system that pulls people in and keeps them there is essential. In fact, if I were to give any advice for anybody trying to write a battle shonen right now, I would say start with the power system. Identify how the powers in the universe are going to work, make it make sense, figure out different ways that powers can be used in unique and interesting ways, and then build characters around the powers that you've created. Make characters personifications of the powers that they use, and then, and only then, begin building a plot. Because if you sit down and think about the most popular anime manga in the world right now, every single one of them has a very interesting and very different power system. Black Clover has magic, which is incredibly standard so far as a power system goes. But Asta has anti-magic, so he works as a wrench in the cog that is a traditional power system. Naruto has chakra, which seems incredibly magic adjacent because it is. However, Naruto also introduced things like dojutsu, kekkei genkai, sage modes, and tailed beasts to differentiate themselves from a traditional magic power system. Truly the best example of a power system being complex and gorgeous and well-rounded out, and thus making the anime and the manga substantially more interesting, is JJK with cursed energy. As cursed energy on its surface level might seem like chakra or magic, but is actually incredibly unique. And while some people might compare cursed energy to Ryatsu from Bleach, there are many key and substantial differences between Bleach's power system and JJK's. By far and away, one of the best ways that you can introduce diversity into your power system is by not having a technical power system. See, while basically everything in Naruto revolves around chakra and everything in JJK revolves around cursed energy, there are other anime and manga out there that don't have what one would call a traditional power system. That is to say that they don't have a unit in which their power is measured. But this is actually incredibly common in Western media, because the power systems that I'm talking about right now are power systems where those who have powers simply have just that. Powers. They don't have elemental releases, they don't have innate techniques. They either have superpowers or, what we're going to be talking about today, quirks. See, because the beauty of having a power system that isn't really a power system is that every single individual can have a unique and interesting power that doesn't have to be based off some precedent that they had to do this in order to achieve this. Through the incredibly easy hand-wavy motion of saying they have this ability because they were born with it, and they got really good with this ability because they trained in it, you can introduce an individual ability to any member of your universe. And because of that, universes like My Hero Academia have some of the widest rosters of interesting and different abilities. While some people's quirks manifest as purely offensive weapons of mass destruction like Hellflame, other people's quirks manifest as tools of the greater good like Heal Girl's healing ability. And there doesn't have to be some convoluted explanation of how Heal Girl is able to heal, but Endeavor is able to burn. Because at the end of the day, 80% of the population are born with quirks that tie into their genetics. But because the arsenal of techniques used in My Hero Academia is so vast and wide-reaching, it's genuinely hard to sit down and say what the most powerful quirks are. Because on one hand, if you are in a battle against somebody else who's incredibly strong, All for One would be super helpful. But if you just took a shotgun shell of birdshot to the chest, you're gonna want Recovery Girl's quirk. And therefore today we're not gonna be talking about best quirks or most useful quirks, but quirks that punch you the hardest. Yes, that's right, because today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking the top 10 strongest quirks in MHA, ranked and explained. But before I get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me talking about MHA or any of your favorite anime guys, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Who Talk is Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime. This week, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to show off the high level of weeb that you are, because I mean, let's be real, you're watching this video, you should check out my merch store, where I've curated some of the most incredible anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So before we get into our top 10 here, I do have to do an honorable mention. Compiling a list of the top 10 strongest quirks was really hard. Because of the way that things are currently going in the manga, it being the last arc of MHA, a lot of characters are displaying levels of strength that we never dreamed possible for them. That is to say that a lot of quirks that we believed were so-so a couple of months ago have been proven to be some of the strongest quirks out there. And therefore, if you're not a manga reader, this list might have a couple of surprises for you. The first of which is probably gonna be our honorable mention, because our honorable mention is gonna be Himiko Toga's Transform. See, while in the anime for a long time, Himiko Toga's...
I'm not gonna lie, I would say that's pretty strong. I mean, the ability to just transform into anything, that's to me personally, I mean, I can see why it's honorable mention. I have no gripes with that at all.
Seemed like kind of a joke character. She seemed like by far and away the weakest member of the League of Villains. A blood-crazed character whose entire ability revolved around her stealing the blood of people she loves and transforming into them. However, as time progressed and Toga's quirk evolved, we realized she was a legitimate contender. See, this is because in the early days of Toga's quirk, she was able to transform into somebody whose blood she stole. And not only could she become their physical lookalike, but also gain their voice, making her an incredibly powerful stealth agent. And while this quirk was powerful, it was dictated on the fact that Toga needed the blood of the person she was trying to transform into. So there's a lot of prep work for her to pull off her quirk in the first place. Though, that being said, if Toga acquires a cup of the person whose blood she wants, she's able to maintain that transformation for up to 18 hours. Not to mention, if she consumes the blood of multiple people simultaneously, she can switch between her transformations. Once again, pretty powerful, but more of a reconnaissance assassination quirk than an overall outright power quirk. However, in the battle against Curious and a bunch of his subordinates, Toga underwent an awakening, which gave her the ability to use the quirks of the people she transformed into. However, it's not like she can take anybody's blood and get their quirk. She needs to be in love with the person whose blood she's consuming. And thus people like Uchaku or Jin, also known as Twice, upon consuming their blood, Toga would be able to use their quirk, which is powerful but also isn't all that powerful. See, the thing is, this ability is as powerful as you make it, and the reason that it's depicted to be so powerful in the manga is because Jin and Toga were close. However, if Jin and Toga weren't close, Toga wouldn't have been able to use Sadman's Parade. However, because Toga was able to use Sadman's Parade, she was able to mash it with her own transformability, creating a new move known as Sadman's Legion, where instead of just making a bunch of Twices, she was using the blood that she stole from a bunch of heroes and villains, able to turn a lot of Twice's duplicates into lookalikes of heroes and villains, creating a mass panic and confusion. So Toga's kind of in a weird spot. Well, the application of her quirk did allow her to be one of the most powerful people on Earth for a little bit. Not only was that incredibly temporary, because obviously there's no more of Twice's blood to get, but also it was stipulated on the fact that Toga loved Jin. And while obviously Toga has affection for a lot of people, only being able to replicate the quirks of the people who you love is kind of a big detractor. But because I obviously can't deny the level of strength she had in the last couple of chapters, she's gonna be our honorable mention. Now we can get on to our list. Coming in last place, also known as 10th, is Dark Shadow. Now this might be another one that's a slight surprise to anime.
Ooh, Dark Shadow is tough though. I'm not gonna lie, I thought Dark Shadow was one of the strongest in the show, especially when I first saw it introduced. That dude was gonna be a serious problem.
Only watchers. Fumikage Tokiyami's quirk has always been seen as powerful, but not in the highest echelon of strength. It seems pretty widely agreed upon that Tokiyami is in the top 5 strongest characters in Class 1A. And genuinely, I'd actually be willing to give him top 3. But since Tokiyami does kind of exist in the shadows of Class 1A, all puns intended, he and his quirk really don't get as much credit as they're due. So Tokiyami's quirk allows him to manifest a sentient shadow. However, because Dark Shadow is essentially sentient shadow, it's weaker in the light and stronger in night. Now, the problem that Tokiyami faces is the fact that the stronger that Dark Shadow gets, the harder it is to control, which means that the darker it gets, the stronger the Dark Shadow gets, but the less control that Tokiyami has over it. However, Tokiyami has committed himself to training in complete darkness. And upon training in complete darkness in a cave, Tokiyami was able to manifest Dark Shadow in complete darkness at the same size and control that it would be if it were daytime. However, Tokiyami soon realized that light and darkness weren't the only things that dictated the strength and control that he had over Dark Shadow, as his emotions also very much play into it. Therefore, the angrier that Tokiyami is, the stronger the Dark Shadow gets, but the less control he has over it. Now, Tokiyami uses Dark Shadow in a couple of different ways. The first of which is Black Abyss, where Tokiyami equips Dark Shadow to his own body, and essentially wears Dark Shadow like a suit of armor that mitigates his close range weakness, because Dark Shadow is usually extended from Tokiyami's body. He's a mid-range to long-range fighter, but with Black Abyss equipped, he's able to use Dark Shadow in close quarter combat. Outside of this is also Black Fallen Angel, where Tokiyami rests upon Dark Shadow, and Dark Shadow uses its levitation ability to allow Tokiyami to fly. Now, for a long time, when Tokiyami summoned Dark Shadow in complete darkness, it activated a thing known as Ragnarok. And this technique was so powerful, it was able to go head-to-head against the likes of Redestro, one of the strongest villains in My Hero Academia's history. However, much more recently than that, we got to see the true extent of Tokiyami's abilities, as he used a new Dark Shadow technique known as Total Release. With this technique, Tokiyami charges the darkness of Dark Shadow with multiple sources of darkness, and then releases the entirety of Dark Shadow at an opponent. This is used in conjunction with his Black Abyss to make a truly bafflingly strong version of Black Abyss. And through the usage of this ability, Tokiyami, all but briefly, was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of a peak form All For One. And if you can knock back All For One or go toe-to-toe with him for even a small amount of time through the power of your quirk, it's gonna be on the list. But enough about characters that were instrumental in the battle against All For One. What about characters that were instrumental in the battle against the other All For One? There's two now. All For Two. Because coming in at number 9, we have Naito Monoma's ability, Copy. The power of this quirk speaks for itself, and while Monoma does have some pretty impressive feats and is incredibly useful in the battle against the likes of Shigaraki and All For One, there has been no moment where Monoma has gone toe-to-toe against the likes of Shigaraki. He's more a support character. But how does his copy quirk work? Well, you know how Toga has the ability to take somebody's blood and get their quirk if she loves them enough? Yeah, Monoma just has that quirk, but way better. Monoma is able to copy the quirk of anybody he comes into physical contact with. And listen, I know what you're saying.
Oh, but only being able to copy one quirk of a person you're touching isn't all that strong.
It absolutely is, especially when you consider the fact that Monoma can hold on to 4 quirks at once. And after touching that person whose quirk he wants to copy, he gets to hold on to that quirk for 10 minutes, which may not seem like a lot of time, but if you've ever been in a fight...
10 minutes is a long time in a fight. You can do a lot, especially with some of these stronger quirks. You can do a lot in 10 minutes. Still don't know why this is over Dark Shadow, though. I'm not gonna lie to you.
You'll know they don't last longer than 10 minutes. 10 minutes is more than enough time to have a quirk copied. Now, after these 10 minutes run out, Monoma loses the quirk, but he can just get the quirk back by touching the person who the quirk belonged to originally again. Now, there is some drawbacks to this ability. Monoma isn't able to use multiple quirks at once. So while he can have access to 4 quirks at once, he has to cycle through these quirks, which is still more than 99.999% of people in the MHA universe can do. 2, he can't copy or can't use quirks that require a previously gathered resource. So let's say, hypothetically, he tries to copy Fat Gum's absorption ability. Because Monoma isn't Fat Gum and therefore isn't massive and doesn't have the body fat to use absorption, this quirk means nothing to him. The same can be said for Once For All because it's a stockpiling quirk. But even if he could copy One For All, he couldn't use it because his body isn't strong enough to be able to hold it. So he'd be like Deku, breaking his arm or his fingers every time he used it. But still, being able to hold on to 4 quirks for 10 minutes at a time is broken, especially when you consider the fact that if he just maintains constant contact with somebody, he can have their quirk forever, which is why he was so important in the battle against Shigaraki, because with Aizawa kind of down and out, all Monoma had to do was hold on to Aizawa, and now he has Erasure forever, or until at least 10 minutes after he lets go of Aizawa. And this can be applied to anybody. It is an insanely broken quirk. It's like having a Sharingan in the MHA universe. But since we're talking about people with multiple quirks, that brings us to our number...
Could you imagine if that had been a power? A Sharingan in the MHA? Bro, Sasuke would wipe through that world easily. No question. You're not telling me otherwise. I'm sorry.
8 entry on this list. Because coming in at number 8 is Todoroki's half cold, half hot. Yeah, I know, this is one quirk just split into 2 elements.
At 8? This last arc must be on that book. Cause this being at 8, I would have thought this would at least be top 5, but 8?
It's not 2 separate quirks. Now, for as long as we've known Todoroki, we've known that this quirk is incredibly powerful, as Todoroki appears to be the only person on Earth who's able to control 2 separate elements. And this because his father, Endeavor, purposely married an ice user to create a designer quirk baby. And Todoroki is exactly that designer quirk baby, a child with the ability to not only control Endeavor's flames, but his mother's ice. Now, the reason that this quirk is so powerful is because using Hellflame or any ice quirk can lead to the damaging of your body. If you overuse Hellflame, you can get heat stroke, but if you overuse an ice quirk, you can get frostbite. However, if you were able to use ice and flame simultaneously, your body would maintain equilibrium, thus giving you much greater stamina than a straight up fire user or a straight up ice user, while also giving you the capacity to use both of these elements at their highest levels. And Shoto truly does do this. When it comes to ice users in MHA, Shoto is able to generate as much ice as anybody else, being able to cover entire city blocks in ice, while also having the ability to generate entire walls of fire. But the amount of fire that Shoto was able to generate wasn't the only way they upgraded his fire side. See, Shoto, once he got closer to Endeavor, embraced the fire ability passed down by Endeavor, and learned how to use Flash Fire Fist, which constitutes increasing the temperature of your flames to a white-hot melting point. And thus Shoto was able to use pretty much all of Endeavor's abilities, be they Hell Spider, which has him shooting concentrated blasts of fire out of the tips of his fingers, or Jet Kindling, which has him concentrating all of his flames into a fist that he delivers into an opponent's chest. And upon coming into contact with an opponent, it fires a massive burst of flame that severely burns said opponent. But Shoto has actually taken his quirk one step further than even Endeavor, as Shoto, in order to battle against his brother's incredibly hot flames, created a new technique known as Phosphor. This technique requires Shoto to merge both of his quirks together inside of his body, and this technique makes cold fire said to be able to extinguish even the hottest of flames. And thus, with the creation of this new ability, Todoroki is able to battle against Dabi on somewhat even footing, considering the fact that Dabi is probably the strongest fire user in the history of MHA. That's saying something. But none of that means anything in the face of our next quirk, because our next quirk, coming in at number 7, is Aizawa's quirk, Erasure. See, much of the same capacity that Asta having...
Wait, if we just said it's based off of how much they punch, I mean, this is him taking something away. That's not strong, is it? Am I tripping? Didn't he say that we were talking strongest, like most that it can knock you out? I mean, it takes away your quirk and it's just up to straight hands, but you can still knock Aizawa out without your quirk if you just got martial art skills.
Anti-magic in the Black Clover universe makes him incredibly powerful because he lives in a universe where anybody of any meaningful fighting capacity is heavily reliant on their magic. So when you introduce somebody who's able to take away that magic, you get a very powerful foe. And that is exactly what Aizawa is in the MHA universe. In a world where all of the most powerful fighters are heavily reliant on their quirks, Aizawa has the ability to take away said quirks. However, unlike Asta, who has to come into physical contact with the magic he's trying to negate with his anti-magic, Aizawa simply needs to see somebody. Therefore, anybody within Aizawa's sight is subject to their quirk being erased. And this applies to anybody of the highest caliber of strength, even the likes of All For One, meaning that Aizawa and his quirk are absolutely vital in the battles against Shigaraki in All For One. However, that doesn't mean that Aizawa's quirk doesn't have some weaknesses, as the quirk is nullified whenever Aizawa blinks, and using the quirk gives him severe dry eye. And outside of that, technically Erasure has no offensive ability, which is why Aizawa has had to teach himself how to use the wraps he wears around his neck, because while he can erase somebody's quirk, they can still punch him in the face. On top of this, if a quirk is a heteromorph type quirk, they can't really be nullified. It's not like Aizawa can nullify the usage of a tail. Not to mention that the usage of this quirk is heavily reliant on Aizawa's eyes. So if one or both of his eyes are destroyed, the quirk is basically gone. But still, being able to erase the quirks of anybody you see is very broken, especially when you consider the fact that all you need to use it continuously is a guy whose entire purpose in life is to spray your eyeballs with water. Imagine being that guy, having an objectively useless quirk and getting the call like,
hey, we need you in the battle against the strongest person on Earth.
Oh, what am I doing? Moistening a guy's eyes. Okay, yeah, I'll be there. But enough about Aizawa. Let's talk about his adoptive daughter.
Hey, that's what they call easy money, though. I'm getting paid just to put water in his eyes. Bet that.
Because coming in at number 6, we have Ares, rewind. Listen, there's a reason that Overhaul dedicated basically his entire life to using Ares' quirk in any way that suited him. That's because Ares' quirk is objectively insane. See, in premise, Ares' quirk sounds somewhat simple. It allows her to reverse a living individual's body back to a previous state. So a lot of people tend to think, oh, okay, cool. So let's say hypothetically you get slashed across the chest with a knife, she can make the chest slash go away. But it's a lot more than that. Within the capacity of Ares' quirk is technically immortality. See, Ares can not only heal people's bodies, but also undo body modifications and make people physically younger. But Ares' quirk can go one step further than this. Ares accidentally used her quirk on her father. And since she wasn't in control of her quirk at this time, she used her quirk on her father so effectively that she returned him to a state where he didn't exist. Because prior to us being children or embryos, we straight up did not exist. We all have a previous state of non-existence, which means not only does Ares have the ability to heal you and make you younger, but also the ability to make you stop existing. But Ares' quirk only works on living things, not inanimate objects or concepts. It's not like she can reverse time. And thus, it's kind of hard to trade because how many people need their bodies reversed? Also, we learned that her quirk is an accumulation type quirk, and the strength of her quirk is tied to the length of her horn, which gets longer with the more time that she hasn't used her quirk. So the longer that her horn is, the more of her quirk she's able to use and at a higher level. But even with all of these stipulations in mind, Ares' quirk is still insanely broken. From not only being the perfect healing quirk, but also having the possibility to erase anybody from existence, it's undeniably powerful. And therefore, it's getting our number 6 spot. But unfortunately, when you're talking about raw offensive ability, Rewind just doesn't live up to the strength of this next quirk. Because coming in at number 5, we have Shigaraki's Decay. Now, technically, Shigaraki's got a whole lot of quirks, but Decay is the quirk that he started with. And so far as quirks go, well, it started out relatively weak. I mean, not that weak. It was still pretty strong back in the day. It has now become a monster of a quirk. See, Shigaraki's Decay allowed him to disintegrate anything that he touched with all 5 of his fingers, which is why,
because then it destroyed an entire city, like miles and kilometers, like 200 kilometers of city blocks, right?
Shigaraki's usually wearing gloves, but when he takes the gloves off, things get serious. Now, upon Shigaraki touching something like, let's say, my palm, the decay would begin to spread throughout my body. So in order to make sure
Minato got that, bruh. He beat Obito. You can't touch him.
That the entirety of my body didn't disintegrate, I would have to amputate my arm before the disintegration got to the rest of me. But Shigaraki has taken the concept of his decay spreading to a whole new level. Shigaraki is now not only able to disintegrate somebody's body by touching a certain part of them, but also able to spread his disintegration through entire groups of people or through entire cities. See, in Shigaraki's battle against Redestro, his quirk underwent a reawakening, where he was now able to activate his decay with less than 5 fingers, only needing 2 against Redestro, and to also allow his decay to spread between objects touching the things that he's decaying. So if hypothetically Shigaraki were to use decay on my floor, if I was touching my floor, I would also decay. And Shigaraki uses this newly awakened quirk to basically destroy the entirety of Daika City. However, after the surgery that made him all for 2, simply by applying his decay with 1 good hand down to the ground, he was able to destroy a third of Jakku City. And now anybody hit with anything that is decaying is enough to kill a person. So that is to say, if hypothetically Shigaraki were to decay a baseball and chuck it into your chest, the decay would spread to you and you would die. What's scarier than this though is that now Shigaraki has the ability to choose what's decayed and what isn't. See, if I'm on Shigaraki's side and he's decaying the house around me, he can choose actively to not decay me. But if there was 20 enemies inside of my house that he did want to decay,
that is sick control. I can just touch the ground and be like, you know what? I'm only going to decay you and you're like 30 feet away or 30 miles away. But I'm gonna leave everything else the same, so you don't even see it coming. That is a sick level of control.
He would decay them, and that's terrifying, but not as scary as an army of bipolar sociopaths, because coming in at number 4 is Jin's Double. Now, Jin, also known as Villain Named Twice, is a member of the League of Villains, and he was a lot of people's favorite member of the League of Villains because he's funny and goofy and he loves Toga and he's friends with Hawks, but then Hawks cuts him down. But the reason that Hawks cut him down is because Jin was one of the most dangerous people on the planet. See, Jin has a somewhat simple quirk. See, Jin can create an exact duplicate of anything, be it living or not. However, in order to duplicate said thing, he had to understand its exact dimensions and characteristics. However, Jin is limited to 2 duplications at a time, so not that powerful, right? Wrong. See, if Jin understands a person, their dimensions, their width, their size, and their abilities, he can recreate that person. But he doesn't just recreate that person's likeness, he also recreates that person's personality and abilities. That is to say, since Jin understood Shigaraki, he could make another Shigaraki. And while the Shigaraki that he would create wouldn't have the same level of durability as the original Shigaraki because it would be a double, that cloned Shigaraki would still be able to destroy a third of Jakku City by putting his hand on the ground.
But don't worry, Nick, he's only able to make 2 Shigarakis. That's not awful.
Except that's also not true. See, yes, Jin is only able to make 2 duplicates. If Jin makes a duplicate of himself, since he knows himself, his dimension, his abilities, his personality, the duplicate that he makes also has the ability to make 2 duplicates, and so on and so forth, leading to an infinite source of duplicates, all with the abilities, personalities, and memories of the original, meaning that Jin could hypothetically, for an infinite amount of time, make 1 copy of himself, 1 copy of Shigaraki, and just make an infinite number of himself and Shigaraki to make an army of unstoppable power. Now, the reason that Jin didn't do this for a large amount of time is because one time he made a bunch of clones. But because all of them have the same memories, abilities, and appearances, Jin lost track of who the original was and who the fakes were, which led to him having to kill every single one of his clones. But he got over this, and that was a problem, which led to Jin being able to use techniques like Sad Man's Parade, where Jin simply made an infinitely multiplying amount of himself. And since there is no limit to how many of him he can make, this means that Jin could very easily overwhelm entire countries or the entire world with next to no effort, and that's with just doubles of himself. Never mind if he's throwing other people in there with incredibly powerful quirks. Why have the ability?
And that's kind of like Shadow Clone Juice, because remember it's like a filler episode where even Naruto, outside of having a book bag on his back, almost forgot who the real person was too. So the Shadow Clone's working in a much similar capacity, so I could definitely see why that would get pretty scary.
To create something in order for it to destroy something when you can just control creation and destruction simultaneously. Because coming in at number 3, we have Kai Chisaki's Overhaul. This technique is absolutely broken and probably should have shown up a little bit later in the manga. However, its power was so daunting that almost the entirety of the Hero Society in Japan had to come together to battle against it. See, Overhaul gives Chisaki the ability to disassemble and reassemble all matter. Basically meaning Chisaki's Overhaul ability gives him complete and 100% control over matter. Period. Simply by laying his hands on somebody, he can disassemble their entire body, shattering them into a million pieces. Or if they've been bisected down the middle by an enemy, he can reassemble their body to snap them back together. But this quirk doesn't only apply to humans. Chisaki has the ability to manipulate all matter, inorganic or organic. He could take my floor and turn it into a tree. What's crazier than this is that Chisaki can also use this ability to merge his body with other people's bodies. And the more people that Chisaki merges with, the more quirks he acquires. Because upon merging with somebody else's body, he gets their quirk, which is it's just all for one, with the ability to control matter, and with a little bit more legwork. Not to mention, he's obviously very much able to use this quirk on himself. So if he's to incur an injury, he can simply just heal it. And the only reason that Chisaki lost is because the entirety of the Hero Association and the League of Villains teamed up against him, and the overall brokenness of Eri's quirk Rewind, as Rewind kind of acts as a straight counter to Overhaul. However, without the likes of Eri, there's no chance Kai Chisaki would have lost to really anyone, except for probably All For One. Really, the only true weakness to Overhaul as a quirk is that without his arms, he can't use it, as the quirk is activated in his arms, just like how Aizawa's quirk is activated in his eyes. But if he were to be healed through something like, oh, I don't know, Rewind, gets the quirk back. But unfortunately for Chisaki, he wasn't the main character, or even the final villain, and thus his quirk only gets to be in the top 3. Because coming in at number 2, to no one's surprise, is One For All. One For All is obviously the quirk that the entirety of MHA is built around, and 9 people throughout the history of MHA have wielded it, with Deku being the 9th and final wielder. See, obviously One For All was transferred to Deku by All Might, and this quirk allows Deku to stockpile massive amounts of power to unleash in key moments, making Deku one of the strongest, fastest, most agile, and durable people in all of MHA. But Deku wasn't the first person to be impressive with this quirk. Obviously, Toshinori Yagi, also known as All Might, used this quirk for over 4 decades, and was so powerful with this quirk he was able to defeat the likes of All For One. However, there's some key differences between All Might and Deku, and that is this size. See, when Deku first inherited One For All, he wasn't able to use it at 100% capacity, as anytime Deku wanted to use his quirk at 100% capacity, it would shatter the bones in his body. However, as Deku trained and became more and more familiar with his quirk, he got to use it at a higher and higher level of capacity, where now in the manga he's able to handle it at 45% capacity without breaking his bones. However, Deku has found ways to reach a pseudo 100% capacity. See, Deku is the first user of One For All to use its true stockpiling ability. See, what all the previous wielders of One For All didn't realize is that the quirks that they had while also having One For All were being passed along with the quirk. In actuality, while everybody thought that the first wielder of One For All For One's brother, didn't have a quirk, he actually had a stockpiling quirk, which allowed for every single person who got One For All down the line to add their quirk to the greater consciousness that is, well, One For All. Which is why, on top of One For All, Deku now has access to 6 quirks, which, mind you, is all the quirks he'll get. Because the first wielder of One For All had the stockpiling quirk, and All Might was quirkless just like Deku, leaving 6 wielders of One For All who had quirks on top of having One For All. These 6 abilities are Float, which gives Deku the ability to float, Smoke Screen, which gives Deku the ability to make a smoke screen, Black Whip, which allows Deku to generate black tendrils from his hands that he can use to swing around like Spider-Man or grab onto people or objects, Danger Sense, which essentially gives him a sixth sense about incoming danger and the ability to ascertain how powerful an enemy is, Fajin, which gives Deku the ability to operate like one of those old BB guns, whereby repeatedly doing a motion over and over and over again, he can store energy.
Hey, yo. Nah, we ain't gonna let you slide with that, gang. We gotta rewind so that you see that.
Because the first wielder of One For All had the stockpiling quirk, and All Might was quirkless just like Deku, leaving 6 wielders of One For All who had quirks on top of having One For All. These 6 abilities are Float, which gives Deku the ability to float, Smoke Screen, which gives Deku the ability to make a smoke screen, Black Whip, which allows Deku to generate black tendrils from his hands that he can use to swing around like Spider-Man or grab onto people or objects, Danger Sense, which essentially gives him a sixth sense about incoming danger and the ability to ascertain how powerful an enemy is, Fajin, which gives Deku the ability to operate like one of those old BB guns, whereby repeatedly doing a motion over and over and over again.
Come on, gang. Come on, man. We can't repeatedly do that motion over and over again. No, I mean, it can be done to us, and it definitely will make things a lot stronger, if you know what I mean, but we can't be... Yeah, I got you in 4K. No, that's probably like 1080p.
Again, he can store energy in the part of his body doing said motion, and then unleash that energy whenever he wants. And with the power of Fajin and a 45%...
Ain't it crazy? That's literally how it worked, too. Storing up energy and then releasing it whenever you... and then releasing it whenever you want to.
Capacity of One For All, Deku is able to achieve a pseudo 100%, as the energy released by Fajin covers that other 55% that Deku can't access yet. But Deku is also able to go over this pseudo 100% with the last quirk he manifested, Gear Shift. This technique allows Deku to change the speed or velocity of anything he touches, including himself, which gives him the ability to either massively increase his speed or the speed of his opponent. Now, Deku usually uses this to make himself faster and therefore increase the power of his strikes, and therefore, while it sounds incredibly powerful, unfortunately has a large amount of drawbacks. See, because while the original user of this meta ability was only able to use it on small objects, because the quirk has been with it all for one for so long, it's now able to be used on basically anything. But because of this, it puts a massive strain on Deku's body, making him borderline unable to move after 5 minutes of usage, because the usage of this technique has Deku operating in a state where he's not getting enough oxygen. Therefore, after using this technique for 5 minutes, his body will be completely deoxygenated. With the power of Gear Shift, Deku is able to do things like break the sound barrier or reject the laws of inertia. That is to say that Deku, while he's flying at you at 700 miles an hour, can stop himself mid-air and dodge your punch. All of this while accessing 120% of One For All. It is truly his ultimate move, and also kind of a direct rip from One Piece, but whatever, inspiration.
So Nick, if One For All's at number 2, what possibly could be at number 1?
Yes, that's right, you guessed it, Windex Spray Bottle Head Guy. Sure, we don't get to see a lot from Windex Spray Bottle Head.
Hey, hey, I had to put a headphones out on that one. Ain't no damn way he said Windex Spray Bottle Guy. It's number 1. Hold on.
Head guy, but what we did get to see from him is that the laws of inertia. That is to say
There's
that
no way
Deku,
he's
while
telling
he's
the
flying
truth.
at you at
There's
700
no way.
miles an hour, can stop himself
can't even see
mid-air
the-
and dodge your punch.
no
All
way.
of this while accessing
He cannot be for real.
120% of One For All. It is truly his ultimate move, and also kind of a direct rip from One Piece, but whatever, inspiration.
So, Nick, if One For All's at number 2, what possibly could be at number 1?
Yes, that's
no
right.
way.
You guessed it. Windex Spray Bottle Head Guy. Sure, we don't get to see a lot from Windex Spray Bottle Head Guy, but what we did get to see from him is that he can indeed spray things from his head. And what more could you ask for than that? Now, obviously, it's All For One. Genuinely, what do I need to say about All For One that hasn't already been said? It's a quirk that allows All For One to steal the quirks of people, leaving them quirkless. But it also grants him the ability to give people quirks, giving him complete and total mastery over everybody's quirks on Earth. And not only does he have the ability to swap people's quirks out as he sees fit, he also has the ability to give one person multiple quirks, which is kind of a curse because your body isn't supposed to maintain multiple quirks. And basically every single quirk you get added over one knocks down your IQ by about 30 points. However, just because he can steal
Dang,
a
you
quirk
dumb.
doesn't mean that he steals a quirk's proficiency. That is to say that if he steals a quirk that's hard to use, he can't use it at the level that the person he stole it from was able to use it. On top of this, All For One has realized that he's not able to steal quirks of the newer generation, as quirks have evolved as the generation have gone on, which is why he went to Dr. Garaki to transfer his consciousness to a younger body, and that younger body was Tamura Shigaraki. All For One has to do to steal a quirk is get a hand on you. Now, it's usually getting a hand on your face, but we don't know if that's a prerequisite. Now, All For One also went to Dr. Garaki for more than just trying to find a young, supple body to get on in. Because of the damage done to him by All Might
No,
in their
did he?
battle, his body can only sustain so many quirks, putting a limit on what used to be borderline limitless. But it's still like a lot of quirks, which you can either use individually or one after another, or in combination with each other. Kind of like Sun Eater's ability to manifest individual abilities based off the multiple different kinds of things he ate. However, in All For One circumstance, it's just mashing a bunch of quirks together in order to get the most effective quirk possible. So how many quirks does he have? Like over 30. He has, and I'm gonna have to read them: Search, Warping, Air Cannon, Spring-like Limbs, Rivet Step, Force Quirk Activation, Impact Recoil, Multiplier, Hypertrophy, Rivet, Spear-like Bones, Kinetic Booster, Brawn Boost, Infrared Life Force, Radio Waves, Hard Flame Fan, Fierce Wings, Impure Beam, Dark Ball, and then a bunch of more unnamed ones that just do crazy things. Like his unnamed Glue Quirk or his unnamed Spatial Distortion Quirk. And while I would love to sit here and go over
That's a
what
lot of
every
different quirks,
single
though.
one of those quirks does, that can and probably will be its own video. Especially when you
Top
consider the
10
fact that on a
All For One
week-by-week
quirks.
basis, everything about All For One is pretty much changing. So once this final arc in the manga is done, I'll do a big comprehensive deep dive into all things All For One. But for the moment, you get, he's got a lot of quirks, and therefore, he's strongest. And yeah, sure, will Deku and All Might win in the end? And will One For All
Probably.
prevail over All For One? Absolutely.
Probably.
But they wouldn't win in a one-on-one fight. I mean, sure, All Might has won in a one-on-one fight. We also know who won
did?
against wielders of One For All for like a century before All Might came around. All For One. He's got a big lead in the win column. And let's not sit here and act like Deku is battling against Shigaraki or people are battling against All For One in straight up one-on-ones. All For One is stronger than One For All. That's the problem. But the power of friendship will prevail. What do you...
But hey, we ain't gonna act like what they always say. You only as good as your last fight. What have you done for me recently? So, going along those lines, All Might's dub is the last thing that happened. So we good to go. But no, for real, I can't believe he really tried to hit the Windex spray bottle guy. That's crazy. But let me know down below what you guys think. I would say we gotta put a little bit more respect on the Shadow Quirk. Honestly, I would probably at least knock it up to 9. The Fire and Ice Quirk, I still believe needs to be way higher because there were 2 quirks on there with the Eraser Quirk and the Rewind Quirk. Yes, they're great supplemental quirks, but as far as offensive capacity, which I thought we were talking about today, they don't do anything. Like even he just said like he has to use his like little elastic bands because yes, I can still walk up to you and beat you up, or yes, I can just be an animal as my quirk, like the kangaroo dude, and just whack you with my tail. Same thing with like the Rewind. I could just walk up to her and hit her when her horn is gone. Like all I gotta do is wait for the horn to go away and then I'm good. So I didn't see why they were on there just based off of what he said we were going off of, but they are very strong quirks though, through and through, so they deserve to be on the list as strong quirks. But I thought we were just going off of like pure offensive ability, pure ability to knock somebody out. That's the only reason I say they don't need to be on here. But let me know if you guys agree with it down below. What are some other quirks that you think deserve maybe an honorable mention at least, if not on the list? We'll go ahead and chop it up down below in the comment section, man. It's me, your boy SGG. Gaming channel video. Your boy Sean Too Smooth, aka Black Avatar King Leo, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe when you guys are way out. And over to that game channel, man. Smooth got game. We got the Sly Cooper I almost said rebuild. Sly Cooper walkthrough on the PS5 now this time around. Going down the channel, you guys voted for it and said you guys wanted to see it. So Smooth got game to go and see those. That one dropped yesterday on Monday at 4 p.m. And we'll be bringing those out as the rest of the weeks and days go on until we finish up all 3 games. So I'll catch you guys in those videos, man. I'm out for the day. Later.